The meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada. Ms. Quigley.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, our first item is to conduct our first citizens participation period.
First time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak on a posted agenda item, now is your opportunity. I will say there's a couple that want to speak on 39. We are going to hear that item and allow comment during that item. So you have your choice, speak now or speak then, but no two timers. So I'll hold these three cards. Mike, did you want to speak now or later?
Sure, now would be fine.
Okay, please. Mr. Saltman.
Okay to jump ahead on the schedule then?
Not at all, no problem.
Hello everybody, my name is Michael Saltman. I'm the owner of the Vista Group. Hello Tina. I've been involved in this community for many, many years, and particularly in terms of development and transportation, as many of you know. In fact, I was the chairman of Bruce Woodbury's Citizens for Improved Transportation for Question 10 back in whenever that year was. So I've had an interest in public transportation. I've had an interest in the community's development. I have been, as you know, some of you know, a really long-term supporter of all things light rail. I was the one that started the whole Midtown UNLV concept. I worked with Tina's predecessor, Jacob Snow, on that concept. We were able to build the multimodal transportation center at UNLV, and it was underway for that project. Of course, the recession hit, and so 08 to 2015 kind of slowed down the time frame for us. But after all these years, 15, 20 years of being a huge light rail supporter, even more than BRT, although I could certainly live with a really advanced dedicated lane BRT program as well. But I'm a convert now. I'm a convert from light rail to autonomous vehicles. So my statement today to you as a board and to your staff is that I'd like you to really seriously consider the future for next gen, as Tina Quigley calls it, next gen transit, which is autonomous vehicles. I just took a group, we formed a venture called the Nevada Innovation Center, my partner Nissim Ezekiel and me, and we took a group of Nevadans, a delegation to Israel, to Tel Aviv for the mobility conference in November. And the penny dropped from me at that conference. What I saw there was everybody from the world came along talking about autonomous vehicles and how that's going to change the world. And I'm a convert. I was a convert there. Then I came back to Las Vegas and I talked to a fellow that's part of the Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C. He's also a friend of Tina's. I spent a lot of time with Michael Sherwood in the city, who's probably one of our top technology brains and gurus in this community. And like I say, I'm a convert. So I'm hoping what you consider today and going forward is another option. And the option is less expensive, dedicated lanes, autonomous vehicles, and all that's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. So it's a very short time frame for these changes to occur in the research and development of autonomous vehicles. So that's my statement. I'd like you to consider it. I'm available for that discussion at any time, of course, and I want to work with the RTC like I have been for some time with Tina and with David Swallow and the team, so I'm available and like to get involved, and we have a lot of possible technology coming to town that can help advance the discussion. So thanks for listening to me. I'm looking forward to hearing the presentation today, and I look forward to working with the RTC on what might be a whole new 21st century option.
Mr. Chairman,
Thanks.
should I ask Mr. Saltman?
Thank you, Mr. Saltman. Yeah,
A couple
Mayor.
questions before, since you won't be here for the conversation later. I wanted to know about your thoughts on autonomous vehicles, whether you're talking about autonomous buses or whether you're talking about autonomous cars, because we're talking about lane space and lane availability and how we're going to move people, knowing that there are going to be more people on the roadway. And I would be interested in knowing.
I'm talking more about autonomous vehicles are going to happen. Driverless vehicles are going to happen. Right. Vehicles, cars. I'm talking about autonomous buses, trams, what I consider a cool factor. Again, you have to have dedicated lanes for this, but it could be really so flexible. It could be Maryland Parkway, it could go to Sahara, it can go Flamingo, it can go to Las Vegas Boulevard. The flexibility of this concept is really, it's almost, you can almost think there's so many possible options for autonomous trams, buses, and the like.
And you're talking about the technology maybe being available in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's incipient. It's happening right now. I think we could bring people to the table to talk to the staff and to talk to the board and talk about what's actually happening today in the autonomous vehicle world. It's happening around the world, but for sure, Las Vegas could be a leader in a whole new world of technology, which I think would be a very exciting prospect for all of us here.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Yes, my name is Ed Euling. Yes, Las Vegas can be a leader. Las Vegas should be the greatest city in the
Mr.
world.
Euling,
Ed,
what
Euling.
agenda item?
Oh, I don't know. About the light rail.
Okay,
I hope you'll
39.
ignore everything
Very
Michael
good.
said. Las Vegas could be the greatest city in the world by developing its resort corridor. And the way to do it is to get the traffic off the surface and underground. It's much more safe there. You can have tunnels everywhere. You go to any great city in the world and they have a subway system. And now we have this huge opportunity with the Boring Company, which is going to do the convention center 2 miles for $50 million. That's $25 million a mile. Multiply the 9 miles of the system that we're talking about of the light rail. That's at $50 million a mile. That's $450 million. That's $250 million less than the budgeted amount. And it's a much better system. Please travel around the world and look at the great cities. Las Vegas has a chance of becoming the second real city in the United States after New York. And we should take advantage of that. It'll be the greatest place in the world to live, work, and play, all without needing an automobile. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board on a posted agenda item?
Hi, Ken McDonald, affiliation Newfields Environmental Consulting. We're a multinational firm. And in my day job, I've worked on much of the major infrastructure in Clark County, the Regional Flood Control Master Plan permitting, the Hoover Dam Bypass Bridge I worked on, and more recently the I-11. I'm also affiliated with Southern Nevada Strong, which many of you know is designed to help our community become more livable, more sustainable, more economically vibrant. And through that work, our committee and others went to Denver and went to Salt Lake City to find out how they did transit-oriented development. How did they make it happen? And what were the benefits to those communities? And they were extraordinary. And we heard over and over the same message was rail was the way to go. And so I'm encouraging the board to support the Maryland Parkway item 39 light rail alternative. And the reason rail got the edge over and over was the development community reported it's a bus lane. You can change the bus schedule with a drop of a pen, whereas rail is steel in the ground. It's a commitment. You've invested millions, they're going to invest millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And the economic development that comes from rail, we also heard from a vice president from Panasonic building a world headquarters just outside of Denver. Why there? It's in Kansas, really, because rail. Their millennials, their next gens, their newer people won't go if there's no rail. They don't want to drive. They want to be connected and have somebody else do it for them. And that's why cities that have embraced light rail, Portland, Madison, Wisconsin, really? People are choosing Madison over us? Come on. So we're a leader in so many things, so many things. I've been a proud and happy resident of Southern Nevada since 1989. And in this, we're just not quite there. So again, encourage the board to have the foresight, the wherewithal to support the rail alternative. Denver's great, Salt Lake's great, we're better than them. Also, it's a jobs program. It's going to put a lot of people to work for a longer period. Always a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Brown, members, Alita Dupree for the record. I reiterate that I will speak on item 39 at the time that you call comment when you hear that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close this portion of public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Your next item is to approve your agenda. We do have one change. We'd like to request that item number 16 be pulled from the agenda, and we'll bring this item back to the board at the May meeting. Otherwise, your agenda is in order and ready for your approval.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your next item is to receive your CEO report, formerly known as General Manager's Report. So before we get down to business, though, I want to wish a very happy birthday to our Chief Strategy Policy and Marketing Officer, Angela Castro. Aww. You gotta come up and get it. As you know, Angela is known for her intensity. Well, there's one in there, yeah. Happy birthday, Ange. You know, she's known for her intensity and drive to get things done, and our agency is fortunate to have someone with her can-do attitude and gusto. So, Ange, on behalf of us, all of us, happy birthday. Next, we'd like to recognize some people. Our first official item in today's GM report is an operator recognition from our contractor, Keolis. Do we have Mr. Scott Thompson in the house? Scott, are you with us? Can you come on down? Mr. Thompson is credited for helping save a 4-year-old girl in a dangerous situation. After wandering from home, she'd gotten lost and she was found alone crying and outside. Mr. Thompson noticed the young child while driving his route, called for help, and stayed with the girl until the police arrived. So thank you, Mr. Thompson, and helping keep our public safe and representing the agency so well.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I just want to say thank you, and just thank God for putting me in a position to help that young lady, young girl. And I want to thank RTC and Keolis for shining the light on this situation. And if you see something, say something. Thank you.
Yeah. We have one more recognition. Next is an operator from our contractor, Transdev. Do we have Robin Beecham Chancellor in the house? Robin, are you with us? Yay! Come on down, Robin. Robin showed strength and courage during a stressful and dangerous event. While picking up a passenger, Miss Beecham Chancellor witnessed a shooting. She quickly got the passenger on board, brought her passengers to a safe location to call 911, and kept her passengers calm until the police arrived. Thank you, Robin, for your brave actions and service and representing the RTC so well.
I'd like to thank RTC and the commission here, Transdev, and actually this award goes to my safety and training team because without their training, I wouldn't be able to spot or, get all my passengers around safely in a matter. Thank you.
April 8th through 12th is National Work Zone Awareness Week, and to help celebrate, the RTC hosted a Work Zone of the Future demonstration yesterday at the Southern Nevada Traffic Management Center. Media and guests stopped by to take tours of a live work zone equipped with advanced detection and monitoring technologies meant to improve congestion and safety in and around work zones. And a first-of-its-kind pilot demonstrations of Nexar City Stream, Haas Alert and iCone were featured within this WayCare incident prediction platform, as well as Waze, the crowdsourced navigation app. While we continue to test and monitor, we are hopeful that these technologies will benefit motorists and workers throughout our valley. And I do want to share with you that, not in the script, but just a heads up on something that we're working on that gets me really excited with Nexar, which is an onboard dash cam program. JP has been working with them to train their analytics on what a cone looks like, and then to identify cones through the video streams that we get, and use that live data to help us know exactly where cones are, what type of work zone setup there is there. We'll be able to lay that analytics on top of where congestion and accidents are occurring. So we'll have a much stronger understanding of how cones are impacting the traffic, and in real time be able to adjust the situation as needed. So I'm very, very, very proud of all the work that JP has put in over the past year and a half at least on working on that. So it'll be the very first one in the nation, and I'm so excited to unveil it once we're done. So thanks. Yeah. That concludes your CEO report. Next item is to hear the Nevada Department of Transportation Director's report. Director Swallow. I like saying that.
Thank you. It is truly a pleasure to be here, and I apologize that it took me a minute to get here. There was some weather, there were some other events, and I've been out really getting to know the team and starting to meet our stakeholders, and so I'm glad I'm able to be here. For those of you who haven't met me before, I just wanted to give a really high-level quick background. I am a Las Vegan. So I'm adjusting to life up north. That's been fun, but I'm going to be down here a lot. I'm a Las Vegan. I've been a consultant in Vegas. I've been a policy advisor in Washington, D.C. I worked for the city of Las Vegas, so I have a broad engineering background. I've also traveled the world and seen transportation infrastructure throughout the entire world and talked about the challenges we face in delivering a multimodal, efficient, and effective transportation system. So I bring all of that to the table. I also bring an incredible team of internal leaders, as well as the folks here that we work together with. And I know that we're going to be working together for a while to build a great system for our community. That is a priority to me. And what I'm excited about here is I'm really looking forward to meeting you. I'm going to be setting up meetings to talk to all of you in the coming months when we get out of the ledge session and I'm down here a little bit more. I want to hear your concerns, your issues, and more importantly, your dreams for our transportation system. And then I want to work with you to address and achieve those. So with that, I'll be reaching out, but please don't hesitate to contact me at any time if there's something that I can help with. All right, so with that, let's talk a little bit about our projects. I have 2 projects to talk about. The first one is Boulder Highway. Safety first is our goal, it's our commitment, and it's a value of our organization. No one should die on our roads. And as we know, Boulder Highway is a challenge for our entire community. And so I'm happy to say that we are well underway with a pedestrian safety improvement project that we've started. Right now, we're focusing on 8 critical locations. It's a $1.5 million project where we're going to be doing mid-block crosswalks, overhead rapid flashing beacons, median enhancements, anything we can do in those primary locations to improve safety for our pedestrians traveling along Boulder Highway. Project should be completed by summer, which will just start making it safer right away. And I know we're working together on future Boulder Highway projects, and I'm looking forward to that partnership. Project Neon. Wow, we're almost done. We're almost done. We're almost out of it. If you've been commuting through the area, and I don't know how you could live down in the valley and not commute through that area, I'm sure you're excited to see it getting closer. I understand we're going to have some pinch points this weekend, but as of April, just last week, we opened several new ramps at Charleston to make that connection easier, more straightforward, connecting just straight up to Alta, so we can now get to Alta off the freeway easily. And so I'm excited about that. We're also talking about our opening. You may have heard our save the date went out for a May 16th opening. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to be quite where we want to be at that point. At a minimum, we have additional crumb rubber paving that we knew was going to be lingering, but some of the landscaping and the awesome artistic enhancements. The city's contributed a couple of really cool art pieces. Those won't be in yet. So we're going to hold off on that grand opening from May 16th, push that out. But we're going to be doing an announcement. We're still hitting substantial completion that week. We'll still do a press event just announcing substantial completion. Roads will be open. But the big party will be coming later in July. And that way we can really celebrate with a project that everybody can be truly proud of, and we'll be able to see all the exciting parts of it. So while the roads will be open later in May, there will still be some lingering work, particularly the crumb rubber paving. The final paving layer, we can't do that until temperatures are consistently over 80 at night, because we want to minimize disruption to the traveling public. So more to come on Neon. We're almost done, though. We're almost done. All right, One Nevada Transportation Plan. I think you guys have heard about this. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. It's our long-range transportation plan, and over the last couple of years, we've engaged people all over the state to develop the plan. And what I'm just here to say today is we're starting to work on implementation, and what I'm particularly excited about with this plan is moving us as stakeholders in our transportation community to an outcome-based decision-making group. So as we decide what projects we're advancing, as we decide what projects we're prioritizing, we're doing that based on outcomes to really allow our transportation system to drive our projects, our community forward. All right. One more item, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to one of our team members. Our Deputy Director, Bill Hoffman, is retiring. I'm not sure, he's had some engagement down here. He's primarily been up north, but he is one of our deputies. Tracy's still with us, so you'll continue to see her. But Bill is retiring. Today's his last day. He's moving on to pursue a dream, so we're really excited for him. But if you've been engaging with him, I wanted you to know, transition to Tracy and I for a little bit until I can backfill that position. All right, and with that, I'm actually going to transition to someone who, my slides are out, there we go, needs probably no further introduction, our project manager of Project Neon and our assistant division chief of project management, Dale Keller.
Thank you, Director Christina Swallow. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Dale Keller with NDOT Project Management. Big changes are coming in mid-May that will alter everyone's commute. Everybody from Green Valley, Inspirada area, all the way up from Summerlin to Centennial Hills. And with that change, and this week has really kicked off our aggressive educational campaign for our high occupancy vehicle, or HOV system. NDOT is not doing this alone. We've been working with the Department of Motor Vehicles as well as the Department of Public Safety. Today with me is Lieutenant Chris Dreyer. He'll be able to help answer any questions about law enforcement as well. So over the last 20 years, NDOT has developed this initial Southern Nevada HOV study and plan. We've updated this plan twice, in 2015 and 2018. And really the HOV system is a combination of public input, stakeholder input, working with the RTC as well, to have a system that works for the community as a whole. So what are these changes and what is happening? So with the completion of Project Neon, NDOT is restriping the express lanes on I-15 for one general purpose and then one HOV lane. With this, we're making a direct connect ramp that you see in the middle of the spaghetti bowl right now that will connect the existing US 95 HOV lanes to the new I-15 HOV lane. This will create 22 contiguous miles of HOV network all the way up from the north part of the valley at US 95 and Ann Road, and if you follow all the way to the bottom of your screen, down to Silverado Ranch Boulevard and I-15. Now, another change that you'll see on the screen here, this is what we call a limited access facility, so you can enter and exit the facility in different locations only. So you'll see that with the yellow band and the orange band. That represents the northbound and southbound respectively. So those are the only areas you can get in. We want to incentivize longer trips on the network. We don't want to have a quick in and out that helps reduce weaving, helps improve safety throughout the whole corridor. With this as well, you see as in green, there'll be two new interchanges directly for the HOV system, one with the Neon Gateway to downtown, and later in June will be the connect to the Elkhorn and US 95, and that's to the Centennial Hills Park and Ride facility up in the northwest part of the valley. So for the rules, this is some of the biggest changes that you will see. This will be operating 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this is for 2 persons plus. And why for the change? Why for the 24/7? There's 3 main reasons. The first is really trip demand. Trip demand in Las Vegas Valley happens around the clock. You see that with the special events that occur, and usually those occur outside of those peak time periods. As well as you see all the workers and visitors who are on Las Vegas Strip, those shift changes happen outside our traditional peak hours that we see in other major metropolitan areas. Second is consistent enforcement. Working with NHP and providing a very clear and concise messaging on when you can be and when you cannot be in the HOV lanes is very simple. This is 24 hours, 7 days a week. And last, it's consistent with our neighboring states. Down in LA and San Diego, their systems are 24-hour operations, as well as Salt Lake City. Other things you'll see is some of the yeses and nos. Yes, for RTC buses, both with passengers or without passengers. Law enforcement can be in these lanes. As for the no's, even though you might love your pets, they cannot be in the HOV system if you're the only passenger. So 2 humans only or plus. Electric vehicles can be in the HOV system if there's 2 plus, but if you're the single passenger, you are not allowed to be in that facility. And the benefits are twofold. First is for the user. It saves time and provides trip reliability, also saves money. You'll be able to get to your destination quicker and faster. And then also for everybody else, for the NDOT, the department, as well as RTC and the general public, we're managing congestion. We can't build our way out of this congestion, and HOV lanes can handle and serve more people than a general occupancy lane. It's better use of our infrastructure, and it provides choices for transit and also improved air quality. And what I'd like to end today is talk about this new ATM systems. ATM stands for Active Traffic Management. So what is it? These signs are to provide dynamic message congestion based on prevailing and predicted traffic conditions. So these are real-time information so we can communicate directly with the traveling public. You see them up on the resort corridor on 15 and some on US 95. And these will be spaced every half a mile. As you can see on the picture, these are help provide for 2 instances. First is we have an accident on the roadway, provide an area to further alert traffic as they're coming up. And second is for construction mitigation and traffic control. And the 2 things I'm very excited about this system, and I know the RTC and FAST is as well. First is the dynamic speed limit changes. You'll be able to control the speed of the roadway as you get to a facility to help manage secondary crashes. Also, a unique system you see on the bottom left of the screen there is you'll be able to open up these HOV lanes to all. So if there's an incident to help manage congestion, we'll be able to convert that HOV lane to a general purpose lane by these dynamic signs. Gives FAST an opportunity to help manage our system and avoid secondary crashes. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Director Swallow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. And with that, we conclude our report.
Could I ask a question, please, through the chair?
Councilwoman.
Yes. We've met many times, and I've praised the work you've done. It has been very good. I have had some calls, however, from individuals that live in the Scotch 80s area. The noise seems to have increased quite a bit, and I just wonder if you might check the sound walls there. I'm not getting complaints from any place else. And you know, my ward almost follows that entirety of the NEON project. But if you could check that, I would appreciate it, because we have had these calls in the Scotch 80s neighborhood.
Councilwoman Tarkanian, I'll be happy to.
Thank you very much. And I know you get back to me quickly because you always do. Thank you.
Mayor?
I'm going to assume that the ATM system is tied into the FAST system so that if there is an accident, that there's a fairly quick turnaround time to be able to move lanes or change traffic flow if need be.
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. So this is be operating as FAST does today with our command center. One thing that NDOT has been working with RTC is this wave care system. So this will also help and coordinate the different and fast response time. I know Deputy Director Tracy Larkin has been working with that as well. So all this ties in together, helping with responses and once again reducing those secondary crashes on our roadways.
And my understanding is that all HOV lanes, all 20 plus, only 2 per car. So we're going to eliminate what currently is the practice out there?
Correct. So what is the biggest change you'll see on I-15 is eliminating the express lanes.
And
So-
not so much I-15, I'm concerned about the northwest corridor. So people use that in those posted hours. Don't use it 2 to 7, but beyond that. So this is going to change the whole dynamic. There's only
sir.
2 per vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And what's
So-
the date on that?
So this is the combination of numerous things for that 24/7 operation. It's something we'll continue to evaluate and monitor, but as Director Swallow has said in the past, is that we can't build our way out of this congestion. We have to find better ways to manage our infrastructure. So this was something we'll continue to evaluate as we move forward.
And
Mayor Goodman here, wondering when's the notification going to be to the public?
What I'm going to get to.
Mayor Goodman, Dale Keller for the record. Yes, ma'am. So this is the start. So we want to make sure we hit all the major boards, the city councils, county commissioners, as well as towards the end of the month as we get closer, we're having a media event as we talked about. These are something that we need to educate the public on, and also then enforcement. Lieutenant Dreyer is also the part of the enforcement. So we're going to have this enforcement campaign when these open up to write warnings and talk about enforcement as we get going as these lanes open up.
All right, Dale. Mr. Engineer, the question was, what date is it effective?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This would be mid-May. Thank you.
So we don't have a lot of time, and to pick up on what the mayor's saying, that's why we wanted a date. Today starts the notification that these people are going to have to change their practices. And we can certainly look to our member agencies as far as respective city councils and the county commission to have you come, or the director come, or someone come and just give that same 3-minute presentation, try to get that word out as much as possible.
Yes, sir.
And
And Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mayor Goodman.
just one other thing for the duration. Can there be a duration timeline?
24 hours, I understand.
In perpetuity?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2 things. Dale, I want to compliment you publicly, you and your team. Project Neon has been amazing, and I drive through it a couple times a day. To Kiewit and NDOT, you've accomplished what many people thought was impossible. You've really done a fantastic job. And secondly, and perhaps more importantly, to Highway Patrol, speaking on the northwest part of the valley, the men and women in uniform do a phenomenal job out there. We greatly appreciate it, keeping everybody safe, and you deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank you, sir.
Members of the commission, next is your consent agenda, which may be taken in one motion. It's items 5 through 38, although we have requested to pull item number 16.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mayor Goodman?
Aye.
And I apologize. I will have them record your earlier aye votes.
All my ayes.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Item number 39 is to receive a presentation on the Maryland Parkway Environmental Assessment and adopt a locally preferred alternative. And to give you a presentation on that, we have our Chief Engineering and Technology Officer, Mr. David Swallow.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the Commission. So, we've spoken for a number of years about Maryland Parkway. As you know, it is a critically important corridor to our valley, and in particular for RTC's transit network. And while it is one of our highest productivity routes, in fact, it's the highest productivity route outside of the Las Vegas Strip itself, it's also one of our slowest bus routes in the system. And so that's something that we looked at as we're trying to improve mobility and provide better choices for our people. So why Maryland Parkway? Well, it really stitches together our entire transit network, connecting to 25 of our 39 routes. It is, like I said, a high productivity route. It links to many key destinations that I'll walk you through in the next slide. And you can see we have a high population of residents and jobs within a quarter mile of the corridor alone. But beyond that, it connects to the larger valley through our main transit hub at the Bonneville Transit Center downtown. What are we trying to achieve? As we went out to the public to develop alternatives, ultimately, we're trying to improve mobility and maximize choice. We want to make transit faster, more reliable, and viable. But at the same time, we're looking at a public infrastructure investment that ideally will instill a sense of place and foster new development along this corridor. The proposed route, a little bit different than our current route, which extends from our Bonneville Transit Center in the north and downtown Las Vegas, south to McCarran Airport and over to our South Strip Transfer Terminal. Here you see the proposed route going between McCarran Airport in the south, along Maryland Parkway, where you pass UNLV's main campus, the Boulevard Mall, Sunrise Hospital, and then to and through downtown Las Vegas to our main transit hub, the Bonneville Transit Center. And with this project, we're proposing to extend the one-seat service over to the Las Vegas Medical District, where you have UMC, Valley Hospital, a number of other medical offices, and then UNLV's Shadow Lane campus, where the medical school is located. With this option, we're proposing 3 different alternatives compared to our existing bus service. One is enhancing the bus service. We call it Enhanced Route 109 because Route 109 is the designation for Maryland Parkway. We also have bus rapid transit and then light rail transit. The first option, Enhanced Route 109, here you see an image of what the corridor looks like today. It's generally a 100-foot wide right-of-way with 6 travel lanes and a continuous 2-way left turn lane, primarily along Maryland Parkway. What we're proposing with the Enhanced Route 109 option is to space the stops a little bit further apart, so actually reducing the number of stops, going from quarter-mile spacing to about a third of a mile spacing, and with that, helping to speed up the service a little bit. We'd also look to relocate the stops behind the sidewalks wherever possible and add new passenger shelters to increase the comfort for our customers. Looking at some of the considerations for the Enhanced Route 109, with the faster service, we think it would attract more ridership, but not as much as the other 2 options that I'll go through. Really not much in terms of attracting new development to the corridor, but it would have the least amount of impact in terms of construction and could be phased in a lot faster than either bus rapid transit or light rail. Going to the next option, bus rapid transit, here you see we're proposing to reconfigure Maryland Parkway, converting the 2 outer lanes, the 2 curbside lanes, to become dedicated transit lanes. And these lanes are still available for cars to use to make right turns, similar to what we've done on Boulder Highway, Las Vegas Boulevard North, Sahara Avenue, and Flamingo Road. We're also proposing to move bicyclists out of the roadway itself and creating separated bike lanes adjacent to the sidewalks behind the curbs, giving them a little bit more separation from the traffic and also creating more of a buffer between where people are walking on the sidewalk and where the vehicles are passing by. With this, we're also proposing to space the stops like we discussed with Enhanced Route 109, increasing the frequency and also providing faster service, particularly with having the dedicated transit lanes. We think this will have an impact on the speed. And because of that, we're increasing the reliability and project a significant increase in ridership from going from enhanced bus to the BRT. It's meant to operate like light rail, but without the heavy infrastructure and costs associated with rail. It may attract some new development. We've seen that happen in other cities, but would involve major reconstruction of the corridor as we reconfigure the lanes, redo the medians, and put in larger transit stops. With that, it has a higher capital upfront cost as well as ongoing operations and maintenance costs than our current bus route 109. The final alternative is light rail transit, also known as light rail. Similar to the bus rapid transit concept, we're proposing to repurpose the curbside lanes to become dedicated transit lanes. And again, these are available for cars to use. The rails are flush with the ground. Cars can traverse over them without any issues. So we're, again, helping to preserve some of that traffic capacity that we have there today, but also providing a better facility for transit movement. And again, we're also looking to move the bikes out of the roadway and create the separated bike lanes that you see here. Some of the considerations for light rail, one of the things we consistently hear locally as well as talking to our peer agencies is there's just a much more friendly reception towards transit when it's rail versus bus. People like to ride trains more than buses. And that is an attractiveness that could bring in new riders. It also provides the fastest travel time and the highest potential ridership because it's faster, more reliable. With what we've seen in other communities is that it does also engender a more positive response from the development community when you have a rail-based project in a corridor as far as new land development coming in around it. But it would require major reconstruction of the corridor as it would with bus rapid transit. The other thing is this is the highest upfront cost or capital cost as well as the ongoing operations and maintenance costs option. And here are the numbers. These are the numbers that we presented to the public as we went out for our public comment period. Comparing the ridership for the existing Route 109, currently about 9,000 to 10,000 per day. With enhanced bus, we think that could increase to 10. With bus rapid transit to 13,300 per day, and this is on opening day. And then going forward with rail, over 16,000 per day. We also compared the travel times, and this is just a nominal trip length going from downtown Las Vegas to south of the university near Russell Road. Today, if you rode the bus, on average, it would take about 45 minutes. With the enhanced bus option, might drop a minute off that down to 44. With bus rapid transit, we could drop that down to 38. And again, that's primarily because of having the dedicated lanes. Rail is a little bit faster than that, and this is primarily because with a train, folks in mobility devices, whether they're wheelchairs, electric scooters, etc., can board trains on their own, whereas when you have a bus, our operators need to physically deploy a ramp to enable that person to board the bus. And then once they're on the bus, we secure them in place to make sure they're safe. With a train, you don't have this, and so that really is the difference in the estimated times here. Based on our current experience with wheelchairs on the route, the number of wheelchairs, and how long it takes to board. The next line, you see a capital cost comparison going from $15 million today with the existing Route 109, and this really reflects what we project over the coming years as we replace our bus fleet and maybe update our passenger shelters. Very minimal capital investment. With the enhanced Route 109, you see that goes up to $29 million, primarily because we're replacing all the shelters, constructing new pads, and again, replacing the fleet. With the bus rapid transit option, we had estimated this previously at about $335 million, and then the light rail at about $750 million. I want to qualify that these numbers were generated back in 2016, if I recall correctly. And so these were developed as we initiated the environmental assessment, and we watched the market to see how it was going and kept those numbers in there. But we did update the numbers, and if I could, I'd like to skip to the next slide that shows these updated estimates. So you see here in yellow, again, the capital cost estimates of $15 million and $29 million for our existing Route 109 and the enhanced Route 109, respectively. With the BRT alternative, we estimated at $345 million, which is about $10 million more than our previous estimate. Part of that increase, again, this was done, we hired a consultant to do an independent cost estimate separate from the team that prepared the original estimates. And they came back to us just a few weeks ago with the updated numbers based on the current construction market. What we see with bus rapid transit, it held pretty steady at about $345 million. I'd like to note that that also includes any potential financing costs if we have to bond or things like that. The light rail option increased significantly from $750 million to about $1 billion. This is, again, what we were seeing in the current construction market, which is a little bit different than what we saw over 2.5 years ago. We wanted to make sure that we had a current assessment before coming to you as the board to make a decision, and so we thought it was important to bring these updated numbers to your attention. The ongoing operations and maintenance costs, you can see here we compare our existing Route 109, which costs about $6.8 million per year to operate, to the enhanced bus at about $7.8 million, and that increase is largely due to adding more service to make it more frequent, especially during peak times. For the bus rapid transit option, it's about $8.3 million. Part of that increase is also due to the larger transit stations that we would put in as part of a BRT project compared to the enhanced bus. And then finally, the light rail build alternative at $13.3 million significantly higher than the other options that you see there, but we think is reflective of what the current market is showing for light rail. And you can also see there we did just a nominal cost per boarding, O&M cost per boarding. This is based on the total O&M cost, not accounting for any kind of fare revenue, but varying from $252 for our existing bus to $260 for the enhanced bus to $208 for bus rapid transit, and then $275 for the build alternative. Note that the bus rapid transit is largely lower because of the increase in ridership, but not necessarily a larger increase in cost. Going to the next slide, we look at how could we fund these different options. With the enhanced, we don't show the enhanced bus option because frankly, with the funding sources that we currently have available and what we project to receive in the future, we think we could carry that option forward without any new funding. With the bus rapid transit option, you can see the top line is what's known as the Federal Transit Administration's New Starts program. This is a program meant to fund the capital costs of bus rapid transit and light rail systems throughout the United States. It is a competitive grant program, so we would have to apply for it and compete with everywhere else in the country from New York to LA, but we think this would be a very competitive project. At best, what we're hearing in Washington, D.C., while the program will fund up to 50% of the capital cost, the current awards are typically in the 33% range, so we showed that to just reflect what the grant awards are at today. We also show the next line, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Funds, or CMAQ funds. These are federal funds that are appropriated to Southern Nevada on an annual basis. We already receive them. We got agreement amongst the local jurisdictions to program some of those funds towards the Maryland Parkway project if it were to go forward. And so you see that reflected with $105 million. Finally, we have fuel revenue indexing funds that, when the ballot measure was passed, we had programmed to Maryland Parkway for the roadway-specific improvements. That aside, whether or not a transit project goes forward, those funds are available to improve the roadway along Maryland Parkway. So with that, you see a total cost of $345 million, and we think we could fund that with the funding sources that you see identified. Now going on to the next option, the light rail transit, again, we show 33% from the Federal New Starts program. We also show the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Funds at about $163 million, or 16%. That's the maximum amount we think we could carry forward from our CMAQ funds. We also have the $125 million in fuel revenue indexing funds. Again, those are for roadway-specific improvements. We also added a line for a special improvement district. This is a funding mechanism used by the local jurisdictions to fund roadway projects where you assess the potential benefits of a project and then look to assess that amongst the property owners along the corridor. We think at best we could maybe get $50 million from that funding mechanism, representing about 5% of the total cost, which leaves a funding gap for the light rail alternative of about $330 million. Now these are funds that we would have to secure through new funding sources not currently available to the RTC. And you can see again the total project cost at $1 billion. Going on to the annual operating and maintenance costs, I showed you earlier the total cost for O&M, but what we wanted to do is show you the offset that we get from fare revenue that help offset those costs. And you can see going from left to right, the existing Route 109 service costs $6.8 million per year. We get about $2.7 million per year in fare revenue, leaving us with a net operating cost of about $4.1 million. The enhanced bus, that increases to about $4.8 million net operating cost. Then to bus rapid transit actually decreases to $4.3 million. Again, with a 30 to 40% increase in ridership, it's a lot more fare revenue helping to offset those O&M costs. And then for the light rail alternative, the net operating cost, we think it'd be about $8.5 million or $4.4 million more than we pay today to operate the bus service. We conducted a public comment period from February 4th through March 7th of this year. And I'm happy to report we saw a fantastic response from the community. What's interesting is we received over 1,000 comments, and that these comments were primarily in favor of doing something. They weren't necessarily opposed to the project. And we parsed those out to look at, you can see here how the comments were primarily received, which were through our online website as well as through social media. We also did through our public meetings. We held 5 different meetings. 3 of them I gave formal presentations, 2 of them were more open houses located at various locations along the corridor. And so it's great to see such a good response there. Parsing out these comments and looking at the different alternatives, about 22%, 22 to 24% of the comments were not related to the specific options that are being proposed. They were more general comments, such as improving bus service throughout the valley, maybe improving the pavement on Maryland Parkway. Our buses are too hot during the summertime. General comments about that. Getting into the comments focused on the build alternatives themselves, you can see here in this table, about 759 comments were related to the specific alternatives, with 3% of them saying don't do anything, 8% saying let's do the enhanced bus option, 13% favoring the bus rapid transit, 72% favoring the light rail option, and about 4% saying BRT or light rail. So arguably it's about 15% BRT, 74% light rail were the outcome of that input. You, the board members, asked us a number of key questions as we went through this process and as we were preparing to present this to you today. And the first is, what is the board deciding today? And that is to adopt a locally preferred alternative, picking one of these alternatives that we presented to you to help complete the environmental assessment and get an environmental decision. Beyond that, you asked for what are the costs for each option, which we went through in that table. How could BRT or light rail be funded, which we went through that capital funding table. What is a special improvement district? Again, that's where you identify properties that could potentially benefit from a project and identify a portion of those benefits and how much that could be attributed to those properties for an assessment. Going on to other questions, what are the ongoing operating costs for each, which we just reviewed? What is the projected ridership for each? Again, it varies from 9,000 today to over 16,000 if you were to go to light rail, 10,000 for enhanced bus, over 13,000 for BRT. What is the projected cost per boarding? Again, we had that in that table. Interesting question we received from you and from the public was, if light rail were to go forward, would there be higher fares for light rail? The answer is no. We think it's important to keep our transit fare structure equitable and to make our system accessible for everyone. So this would follow the same fare structure as the rest of our transit network. Going on to the last few questions, what are the estimated travel time savings? Again, you saw it going from 45 minutes today to 32 minutes on the light rail, and then variance in between that. How could each option connect to the airport? Well, today our buses go to the airport via the roadway system starting at Russell Road and circulating into the airport to Terminal 1. If we went forward with the enhanced bus or the bus rapid transit option, we would follow similar travel patterns. If we were to go forward with light rail, we would likely need an elevated track structure to take into the airport, whether it's at Terminal 1, Terminal 3, or both terminals, or another location that the Department of Aviation would decide for us. So with that, you would have to have a new structure for a light rail system. Final question, how long would construction take? Well, for the bus rapid transit option, we think it would take about 2 years to build. With light rail, we think it'd take about 3 years. And again, this is not the whole corridor for 2 to 3 years. It would be different parts of the corridors. We would phase in different sequences of construction in different parts, trying to minimize the impact as much as possible. So with that, the next steps for you and the other board members is to consider is what is the locally preferred alternative that you would like to adopt today, whether it's enhanced bus, bus rapid transit, or light rail, or do nothing. From that point, we'll take your decision and submit it to the Federal Transit Administration to close out the environmental assessment and get what we think will be a finding of no significant impact for the project. That is to be determined by the FTA, but we think it's going that way. From that point, we would look to pursue local and federal funding opportunities, again, applying for competitive grant programs, looking for other funding sources, and then begin project development, likely with preliminary engineering at the first part of next year. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. All right. Mayor?
I have a question about the locally preferred alternative. Let's say something was voted on today by this body, and we ultimately decided that we were able to find more resources, or could we change that alternative? Could we look at different options going forward? Because this coming year really is about doing the engineering and the environmentals and what we need to submit to the FTA and all.
So what we would look for today is a final decision on the environmental assessment that we've presented to you and to the public. But at any time, if conditions change before we get too far into project development, so we could go forward with preliminary engineering next year. Regardless of which option it is, the preliminary engineering is the same. And at that point, after we complete preliminary engineering, if conditions changed as far as funding that was available, we would be happy to come back to you to revisit that. And if you wanted to change direction, we would work with the FTA to modify the environmental assessment to comply with that. Likely go back out to the public, but that is an opportunity to change at that point.
It's our understanding it'd be about 6 months. It would take us about 6 months to go back and change course. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In North Las Vegas, well, what got me elected in there was the last time we had an economic meltdown. Well, unless people don't know or didn't know what was going on, we nearly lost the city there. And so my predecessors and then us, we had to continue on with making some drastic cuts and then make some long-term plans that I guess had not been made before. So I am always really acutely aware of financial guardianship over the public trust in terms of public money. So let's say Barone would be able to reach over here into my magic box and just wave the magic wand and poof, we have these systems up and running right now. Does the RTC, I'm referring to, I think it's slide number 14 on annual operating cost. If we look at annual operating costs, I guess for existing Route 109 and for enhanced Route 109 and BRT, do we have, would the RTC right now have the money to run these pretty much in the black?
I'd defer this question to our Chief Financial Officer, if I could, to answer that question.
Yes, if we were looking at the BRT, you can see that's only $200,000 more in net operating cost. So that would be an easy lift for the agency to fit that in.
Okay. Now, again, if all of a sudden, I could make that $1 billion just disappear, maybe I have a fatter wallet than everyone thinks, right? I don't. But if I could, I would definitely do this for the public. But handing the cost of running this, the light rail over to RTC, would we have the cash to keep the light rail alternative running right now?
That would be much more difficult. To afford that, we would really look for more funding or revenue to help subsidize the light rail.
Okay. I think you answered my question very succinctly. Thank you so very much. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and just, no one heard that I have a magic box.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Goodman here.
Please, Mayor. Thank you.
In speaking with Rosemary Vasiliadis about 8 months ago, she had mentioned the difficulty of a docking station at the airport for light rail. When you look at the choices here, does that create such an impediment that we really should not be looking at that?
Mr. Chairman, if I could. It's certainly challenging physically to get into the airport. We would need to go over or under the roadways that are there today, in particular getting to the terminals. We could do it, but the Department of Aviation would really need to consider how they currently manage their operations, and I'll defer to the Director Vasiliadis as to how that would impact her operations. They've also proposed an alternate site location that was a little bit north of the terminals on an area between Paradise and Swenson, and we could locate on that as well. But I understand that, and any connection to the airport would require the Department of Aviation to bless that.
And could we, in fact, do it through BRT instead?
Yes, there's no challenge with the bus rapid transit. Again, we operate our buses through the airport today. We do have stops at the 0 level at Terminal 1 as well as over at Terminal 3, and we could accommodate the bus rapid transit at either location.
And you could expand were that the call that is asked?
Yes, if the Department of Aviation thought fit for transit to have a larger presence at the airport, certainly.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, David, I don't know if you've had a chance to read the Review Journal this morning, but there's an article about light rail. And a couple of things concern me. One, they mention systems in Durham, Raleigh, that is not going well, and one in Nashville that's not going well. Phoenix seems to be the only community that's been able to complete it. Have you had a chance to look at what happens to the systems as they're under construction and why they're so difficult to build, and should we be concerned about those sorts of things?
Well, I want to quote a former FTA administrator. He said once, if you know a light rail project in one community, you know one in one community. Every community is different, and while I've kept on top of what's been happening in other cities, I know Raleigh, Durham, they had a real challenge when they were not able to get the extension through Duke University, which essentially cut off a lot of the functionality that they were looking for with that project. Phoenix has a program to go forward and continue to go forward, as does Salt Lake and Denver and a number of other communities. It really depends. I wouldn't say that construction of light rail is that much more difficult than other construction, but really it comes down to the people of those communities and what they decide are their priorities. I think that gets to where Nashville had a certain vote against light rail, and that was a decision by the community as to what they wanted to invest in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking of connectivity to other communities, I think, quite frankly, Maryland Parkway is a fantastic area to be exploring, enhancing the travel there. As someone who's actually ridden on the public, actually I go way back. I go way back to the bad old days of Las Vegas Transit, and I don't know if anybody in here remember those days. They weren't so great. Okay, I see someone in the back. Oh, you remember, right? RTC is like we're light years ahead, and I'm really grateful, and it's such an honor really to be here, and I say it from the bottom of my heart. But I was just looking at the overall plans here. It looks to me that, of course, although the city of North Las Vegas, we've had some good foresight in having a major route, that is the North Fifth Corridor. That, of course, if we could get eventually a mass transit system connected that brings in really a river of cars. I mean, we could eliminate a river of cars coming in from North Las Vegas into and then out of this area. But of course, there's no right now. This rail system, if we had for instance, a light rail system, or any kind of system they have out here, there's no direct connectivity. And I'm just saying that if we have a rail system, one that's, of course, inflexible once you put it in, we're looking for quite a ways out before my community would actually be tied in. Looking to our friends to the far south of the valley, I guess it'd probably be a little bit easier to tie in to Henderson, only because, you know, it's an extension of this, again, fixed, inflexible system. Are there any plans in the future to add in North Las Vegas and our sister community to the south? And how many years do you think, and this could be mostly speculation because I know, but I'm sure you guys have thought about it.
We have thought about it and we continue to think about it. In fact, we have a program called Onboard right now where we're looking to the future of mobility here in Southern Nevada. And that includes all of Southern Nevada, in particular the Las Vegas Valley. City of North Las Vegas was the first community in our local area to have a bus rapid transit line. In fact, it was a BRT demonstration project that opened up back in 2004, 2005. With that, we look at the whole valley and connecting it together. And we're looking at a system of key corridors that have transit. First, how do we expand and enhance our underlying transit service? How do we incorporate new technology? And then which corridors do we think are evolving as new development comes in, higher density development that has more demands? How can we meet those demands with increased transit services and evolving the transit lines along those? That includes North Las Vegas, Henderson, of course, Las Vegas, unincorporated Clark County. We are looking at the valley as a whole. So I appreciate your comment there.
Yeah, and the only reason why I say it, because in talking it over with my officials, especially my planning officials, the one concern is at this time, although it'd be a fantastic thing to have, we may or may not have that critical mass of ridership that would actually allow this thing to pencil out and pay it and get paid off. And again, I'm all about the fiscal responsibility to the taxpayer, being one of them myself, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are the FRI funds available for the unique infrastructure required by the light rail? So the steel in the ground, the power to move the system.
No.
Can we use those funds for
No.
those improvements?
No. The FRI funds are limited to roadway-specific funding, including pavement, curbs, medians, things like that. Those, regardless of us going forward with a transit project, the $125 million is strictly for roadway improvements. In fact, if we went forward with, to your point, with a transit project, we would have a schedule of values in the bid where we identify where those funds can be used for what particular items of work to make sure that they are going to what they were intended for.
Okay. The one other question I had, Mr. Chairman, is this. It's my understanding that the $1 billion estimate today does not include an extension to McCarran Airport. Am I right about that?
No, it does include the connection to McCarran Airport. We had developed a handful of different concepts that we had socialized with the Department of Aviation. They weren't comfortable going forward with one over the other at this time because of their own internal studies. But we do have an estimate that for that extension, I think when we looked at it, the one we used in this cost estimate as part of the $1 billion was about $92 million for the airport extension.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The decision before us today is not an easy one, and I know that there's been extensive community outreach. I've chaired the Southern Nevada Strong Regional Plan, and the outreach that was done early on several years ago in that area really called out for the community wanting light rail, and clearly through this effort that you've undertaken, you've done extensive community outreach as well, and we've heard that the community wants light rail. And I think I've not been shy about the fact that I've championed the concept of having light rail in our community, but I'm also a fiscally responsible leader in our community, and I know that we have to look at how we are spending our resources, and clearly a $1 billion price tag is a significant price tag over the ability to provide services to create better efficiencies to get people out of their cars, and obviously when you have some permanence in the ground, you get more people riding the system. But I think that we have a responsibility to look out for additional resources, additional sources of money, private investment, and other ways that might be able to fund this. But I think at this current time, we're not in that position. But I think we have to be continuing to look at how we're moving people in this valley and how we're addressing the challenges that we face to make sure that we're being responsible. We know we can't keep adding roadway to our streets. We can't expand the Parkway to accommodate more cars. We have to look at how we get people out of their cars and how we move them more efficiently in maybe a larger system that transports them. So I guess my inclination will be to support the BRT at this time, with the idea that I would like to encourage the RTC to continue to look at financial resources to see if there's any public or private resources that might support a larger system. But at this time, I think we have to look at the BRT. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Goodman, anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you. I think I'm in line with Mayor March.
Thank you. Just a couple comments. One is, the backdrop we're faced with today is twofold. One, from the RTC standpoint, we're, for the first time in a long time, perhaps first time ever, we're trying to figure out what transit is going to be and our transit rider and what's happened with Uber and Lyft and everything else going on. So we're in a situation we've never been in before, dealing with what are we going to be, not next year, but the next generation. And then as Mr. Saltman brought up, there's also the backdrop of technology. Depending on what expert you talk to, some say the boring company's the future, some say light rail, a European tram, others might say both are antiquated. And those experts that we've spoken to for 2 years, very little consistency. So it puts us in a position as a board and a public agency to do one of two things. We keep analyzing, analysis and paralysis and the do nothing option, or we do something. And I absolutely believe we have to do something. But something that is lowers the risk, certainly as the councilman indicated from a fiscal standpoint, that gives us the flexibility. So as these changes come, and they'll come quickly over the next 3 to 5 years, we're not locked into a strategy. And I think the BRT option gives us that flexibility. Makes a decision, moves forward, tries to get the federal funding that's available today, and gives us the opportunity to, over the next few years, if it's the right thing, aggressively pursue it. If it needs to be tweaked, we have that ability. The airport also worries me, because when people talk about getting some kind of transit into the airport, they're often bringing up airports that literally, like a San Francisco, that has a tram that goes right through every stop. That's just not going to happen, or it's not going to happen from a fiscal standpoint because it's cost prohibitive. The teardrop option that the airport has talked about, I just don't see from a practical standpoint, someone's going to get on a public transit system, go to a teardrop at the outskirts of the airport, luggage or not, get off, get to another thing to go to Terminal 1 or 3. And there could be a solution out there. I don't know if there is, but I know one thing, it's going to be extremely expensive to make that connectivity practical. So I'm concerned about that. And just the cost of light rail, and David, you've read a lot more than I have. I've yet to pick up an article that says anything light rail's coming in on time and under budget. So I think the $1 billion, including the airport, which I was unaware of, is a low number. I think it really is. And then probably the biggest concern of mine today is with the light rail option, we would have to go out to our public and ask for support. And they have this community came through big time with the FRI money, which was to build out the infrastructure, the roadway, the streets, the highways. And they did it in a very, very positive way. Asking for Maryland Parkway light rail, a very specific select part of the valley. In addition to, over the next few years, you're going to see community priorities I know are going to shift towards education, social services, health, homeless. So we would be in a whole different environment trying to convince that same public to give us the support they did for FRI. That's a big concern of mine. What are we doing right now? I think is the best thing we should be doing, and that's building out our infrastructure, building out our roadways, streets, highways, securing the right-of-way. We're doing that, and we're doing that extremely well. The member agencies through FRI have been very aggressive, and I think that's the one constant that we have to stay aggressive on, because we'll build that infrastructure. We certainly have the money to do it, and then whatever comes out on top for the next gen transportation, we will at least have the infrastructure in place. So I would encourage us to continue aggressively with the build out of our infrastructure. Like some of the earlier comments, I will be supporting the BRT and in the form of the motion. Excuse me. Based on conversations with staff in today's presentation, and given our current financial situation, I would recommend that we select Bus Rapid Transit as our locally preferred alternative. And that's in the form of a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members,
Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Could there be a possibility to add to your motion that the BRT extends to the airport?
I would certainly add that. Right now, where'd David go? Is that
I just
part?
think that
Let's
that's
clarify. I
been
think
the
that's
biggest failure. The biggest failure of the monorail is that it never reached the airport. It would have had much more muscle had it. And I think if we go with the more cautious, wise BRT, but build in, there will be a connection to the airport that would satisfy the connection for all the way around.
okay. David's going to speak to that.
Yes, we currently have our buses going to the airport today. I foresee that we would have the BRT would go to the airport.
Okay. So I think we're
Okay,
covered,
thank
Mayor.
you.
We're covered.
Thank you.
And I apologize. I didn't ask if anyone else wanted to speak on that item. Alita, I apologize because you specifically asked to come back and speak.
Chair Brown, members, thank you, Alita Dupree, for the record. I decided to defer my speaking on this item until the matter was discussed and heard so I could prepare my response. I come to you, as always, as a user of this system. I took the bus today and used the app. And I came here to you and continue to come here to you as a supporter of rail. I have ridden the 109 many times. It is a difficult ride. I have been to the various meetings for the outreach and discussion of this plan for rail, which I believe was well reasoned and thought out. I've been to many cities and ridden rail. Rail is proven. Rail goes back 200 years. We've just tweaked it. But I believe in the basics. Rail predates the motor bus. And so it was my hope that we would have had rail to be the genesis of a new system to build our city, to promote infill development and affordable housing and affordable transportation for our working retired and disabled and school folks. And so we are one of the biggest communities in this country that lacks rail. And I was very excited about the possibility of rail. You know, we have a history of building things and building them well. We're building a new stadium, which is coming along nicely, home of Raider football, hence my shirt. We're doing the Las Vegas Convention Center District expansion, which I ride along on the monorail and see the good progress it's making. Those public structures are very important to me because they help bring about a sense of home. I go to many places, but this community is my home. And so I wanted a stadium, and we're getting it. And I wanted a new expanded convention center campus, and we're getting it. And so I only hope that I could have spoken to you before you took this vote. But anyway, I get to speak to you now, and I'll be speaking on my non-agenda items later. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member of the Commission, I do have to comment as we briefed each of you, and several of you we briefed a couple times, my sincere appreciation, and the team and I talked about the fact that the questions that you asked, it was quite clear that this was an important vote to you. In fact, a few of you mentioned that it kept you awake at night. So just I'm very proud to work for you, and as a constituent, really proud of your leadership style and the fact that you cared so much and so deeply about the decision that you did make. So thank you. Next on the agenda is items number 40 and 41, in which Deputy CEO MJ Maynard will introduce.
Thanks, Tina. Item 40 is to receive information on the May 2019 RTC Board of Commissioners meeting and direct staff accordingly. The regular meeting of the RTC is scheduled for May 9th, 2019. Nevada revised statute requires that the RTC set a public hearing for the tentative budget not sooner than the third Monday in May and no later than the last day in May. Rather than hold two meetings, it is recommended that the RTC reschedule its May meeting to a new date of May 23rd, 2019 to address normal business and conduct a public hearing for the budget. The meeting would be held at the regular place and time at the Clark County Commission Chambers at 8:45 a.m. If the RTC Board of Commissioners approves this change, notification will be published.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, great. Item 41 is to receive a presentation on the tentative budget for fiscal year 2020. Mark Trosdahl, who's our Chief Financial Officer, will present the tentative budget to you. After the presentation, the suggested action by the board is to direct the RTC Department of Finance to submit the tentative budget to the Nevada Department of Taxation by April 15th, 2019. Mark Trosdahl.
Thank you, MJ. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm glad to be here to present the budget for fiscal year 2020. We'll start out by looking at our funding sources. For the RTC, you can see that sales tax at 38% is our major funding source for the RTC, along with, after that, the fuel taxes and grants, passenger fares. This year, we are budgeting $593.8 million in revenues. That's a 2.5% increase from fiscal 19. If we go to sales tax revenue, you can see here that we're projecting $217 million of sales tax revenue for fiscal 19 and budgeting $225 million for our 0.5% sales tax in fiscal 20. As we talk about sales tax, it provides 0.3% of the sales tax is 0.3% for public transit. You can see in this chart that sales tax at 66.2% and passenger fare revenue at 27.2% add up to 93.4%, showing two major revenues for public transit. The 0.1% sales tax goes to Streets and Highways, Department of Air Quality and FAST, as depicted on this pie chart. We're budgeting a total there of $56.9 million in fiscal year 20. Going to motor vehicle fuel tax, this is our 9-cent tax on motor vehicle fuel. We're projecting fiscal 19 at $74.9 million and budgeting a 0% increase or flat budget for fiscal 20. Going to fuel tax indexing, FRI 1. Similarly, we are projecting fiscal 19 at $90.7 million and a 0% increase or a flat budget for 2020 on FRI 1. Going to FRI 2, we're budgeting $17.6 million in revenue, and that is based on a preliminary 2018 PPI 10-year rolling average of 1.29%. Going to fare revenue, we are estimating that fares will decrease by about 1% in fiscal 19, and we're projecting another 1% decline in fiscal 20. And looking at one part of that fare revenue, you can see here the Strip corridor fare revenue has been declining since 2015. We are estimating a 7% decrease in fiscal 19 on the Strip and another 5% decrease in fiscal 20, bringing that revenue down to $16.3 million in fiscal 20. As we look at the general market fare revenue, you can see that's a bit different story there. We are actually increasing and growing a little bit in fiscal 19 and projecting a 2% increase for fiscal 19 and another 1% increase in the general market fare revenue for fiscal 20. As we go to the expenditures side of the budget, we can see in this pie chart that our total budget of expenditures is $679.4 million in fiscal 20, and that is a little bit of a decrease from fiscal 19, where we budgeted $765 million. You can see here that our capital outlay continues to be the majority of our funding uses, followed by contracted services. And looking at capital outlay on the next chart, you can see here that we're budgeting $276.1 million, the majority of that being FRI 1, FRI 2, and motor vehicle fuel tax, and also the sales tax for streets and highways construction. That makes up the majority of that, and then transit comes in at 28% of the budget. Looking at our debt service, outstanding bonds, as we talk about streets and highways construction, you can see here that our debt service is budgeted in fiscal 20 at almost $25 million, and we have an outstanding balance of about $202 million in that debt program. Going to the motor vehicle fuel tax bonds, we have debt service of $36.1 million budgeted for 2020, and the outstanding balance there is $235 million. Our fuel tax indexing, we have debt service of $26.5 million budgeted for 2020. Our outstanding balance there is almost $312 million. We go to the transit capital budget. We have $76.4 million budgeted for transit, and of that, grant funding makes up $58.3 million of the funding for that. Going to some of the highlights of the transit capital budget, you can see here that we are budgeting for 60 paratransit buses at $7.2 million, and 35 fixed route buses at $26.7 million. We're going to continue improving our facilities for transit, budgeting $6.4 million for additional compressed natural gas fueling equipment and $7.6 million for shelters, and you can see here that they're also majority grant funded. We're also going to be adding state of good repair improvements to our bus yards for about $10.6 million. we're budgeting about 10.2 million in technology upgrades, and you can see the grant funding there, 65 to 80%. A new project that we have budgeted is the GoMed Build Grant, and that's an exciting program that will be testing autonomous vehicles. That project is budgeted at 72% grant funding, and for fiscal 20, we're projecting we're going to spend on that one about $770,000. As we look at the operating budget for transit, we're budgeting $247.8 million in operating expenses, and that's a $1.7 million increase over last year, which was $246.1 million. The next slide, we look at our fixed route contract cost. We're budgeting $118.5 million. You can see over 10 years that contract has increased about 34%. As we go to look at paratransit, we're budgeting $49.49 million, and that has increased 47% over the 10-year period. The next slide, we have our transit security cost. You can see our efforts there to increase security for the system. And then transit fuel cost, our last slide, you can see the savings that we've enjoyed in decreasing that budget using compressed natural gas. That concludes my prepared remarks. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Comments or questions?
I have a question for you, Mark. Do you budget for more than 1 year, or how do you budget the RTC and plan for the future?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. We do, in the transit fund, project out estimates for 20 years. So we look out 20 years. In streets and highways, we do the same thing for all of those programs. We look at about 20 years out.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out that the Finance Subcommittee did meet last month, and that included Mayor Goodman, Mayor Woodbury, and myself. And we reviewed the budget with Mark, and we believe that they've submitted a responsive budget, and we support what they're putting forward.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Was that in the form of a motion?
That would be my motion.
Motion on the floor. Do we need to read that motion into the record?
It was just to receive a presentation.
I believe the motion on the floor is direct staff to submit the tentative budget. Is that correct? Thank you.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 42 is not an item we need to undertake today. That was for closed-door session. No need to meet in closed-door session. So, which brings us to item number 43, which is to conduct your last citizens' participation period.
Second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board. Now is your chance. Patricia Anderson.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Have it pulled down there.
Yeah, actually, I was on Flamingo bus on 4-2, and you know the strip is up and down. They feel that this is a playtown, which it's not. People got on the bus at Las Vegas Boulevard, and they had whiskey in a bottle. The bus driver told him that you couldn't, he said, you can't get on here. And he turned around again and used profanity to the bus driver. I just happened to be on the bus. I don't take the bus that often. I happened to be on the bus. So I had the bus driver's number, is 111275. And he said to me, well, I was running late. I said, well, even though you were running late, that is not acceptable on the bus. So these people have dogs. Dogs on the bus. And a lot of them, they say that, they are service dogs, but they really are not service dogs. And I feel that You know, like I said, I don't cause any trouble, like as I said, because I try to observe. And as I say, the drivers are fantastic drivers, and they do a fantastic job. They need more of what they really need, and I feel personally, they need, actually at the end of the line, they need to be a 30-minute break. I mean, I know it's not lunch, but it's like, okay, 30 minutes, regardless what they're, relax, what have you, in between. Or either what they need to do sometime, if they really are what they're driving, which is true, they need to, I mean, we're not worried about a schedule, because these passengers, be honest with you, disrespect. And they're not there. So why are the drivers have to be on time? It's not supposed, all right, now I'm not saying that an hour or 2 hours, something like that, but I'm just saying, why should the drivers turn around again and respect, these drivers to respect? They were like another incident happened in Pilot Station. The driver, said it nicely, you turn your radio down. This is my radio. He said, I pay for this. This is my phone. I mean, this is all disrespect. And then they come in with, all right, driver, you know what, driver, I don't have any money, or I left my wallet home. Or like a lot of stupid stuff going on. So like I said again, the drivers need a raise, they need to be a raise, and they also need to get a pension. This is they really need a pension. And they need, at least, I know it sounds crazy, $30 an hour. I know that's what they need. And these drivers are fantastic. I know my time is up. I'm going crazy. I know. But as I say again, and they shouldn't do that. A lot of people are homeless, which is understandable. And I understand that. But these carts and come on there, it shouldn't be. So anyway, thank you so very much. I didn't mean to go over my time. God bless you.
Thank you for your comments.
Chair Brown and members, Alita Dupree for the record. Now I'm going to take my 3 minutes and talk about some other things. So I am feeling the good effects of these new long buses. And I did go to a meeting where we've pretty much retired the double-deckers from our North Division. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to board long buses when I go up on the 113. Hopefully that will come soon. I am hoping that this agency will really push to be innovated. I discovered recently, well, maybe not recently, I've been listening to podcasts. I heard a really good podcast with our CEO and deputy CEO on my phone last week. Listened to it while I was riding a bus. Very, very good stuff. So I'm getting a lot of information. But we have to be courageous and take leadership in a global perspective. 70% of Americans have smartphones. So how can we have 70% of our passenger using the app to ride the bus? And apps are better than cards. Cards are better than paper tickets. Can we have an electric bus? So we're not going to have an electric railway right now. But can we have an electric bus? It's already happening in California and other places. It's a mandate in California coming on. So it is important that we be proactive. I think our communications is lacking. I had trouble getting to this meeting this morning because it was not communicated about that the bus stop in front of our county building was closed due to construction. I had to walk all the way here from the Bonneville Transit Station. And so I have a phone. Push notifications would be nice. I was afraid that I wouldn't make it to the meeting in time, but I did. In the last couple of days, I've had trouble calling this number, and I get a message saying your call cannot be completed as dialed. This is not what I expect from this agency that I care about so much, and maybe it's not due to your control, but it should not happen. So it's important that we not hang on to the past as we build this agency out. Equity must be considering the future and allowing all people to be able to participate equitably in all the things that the future has to offer. So when we want to do something, we have to do it with all our hearts and get behind it and live it, just as I do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, we'll get with Alita afterwards to discuss the closure of the bus stop, but I also want to say thank you for listening to the podcast.
Yes, my name is Ed Euling. I just wanted to ask the question, basically, why more information wasn't given. First of all, congratulate you for making this decision, because I think in the future the private sector can take care of this problem. As Commissioner Brown well knows, you negotiated with the boring company for the system at the convention center, and that system is being done for a maximum of $50 million, 2 miles of tunnels. And as I said earlier, that would mean if we did tunnels and a private company could do this, and the boring company is offered to build free a system down to the stadium and over to the under the strip, down to the stadium and over to the airport. So already you have this huge system being built for free, and for $50 million under the convention center. They will get that money, but the rest of it will be for free. And we should be thinking in terms of interconnectivity and the ability to build above this structure. They're not having big subway cars. They're not having heavy rail. They're using Tesla-type vehicles underground that will go on a track and can go right one after another and transport a huge number of people very quickly. And they at each station, they only stop at the station. Each vehicle only stops at the station that is designated. And so it will go off the track and into that station. In the meantime, all the rest of the vehicles, all the rest of the transport vehicles, move along at a very rapid speed. So I mean, it's an incredible system that they've come up with, and the Convention Authority was brilliant enough to think about these people and listen to them. And they're doing amazing things. They're only on their first level, or what do you call it, first generation of drilling machine, and they're doing it for 25 million a mile. Their second generation drilling machine will be out at the end of the summer. They're working on a third generation, which is all electric drill, which will be out later, which has all sorts of environmental implications, which will be out later, and presumably that can be done for even cheaper. And they're working with Israel and if you've been to Tel Aviv, you know how bad the traffic is there. They're working on the traffic there, a tunnel there for $10 million a mile. So congratulations for this decision, because it allows a lot of flexibility and interconnectivity in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Seeing and hearing no one, close this portion of public comment. Meeting is adjourned.